Hello. Settle in comfortably, wrap yourself up warmly, and let the gentle whisper of stories carry you into a deep, peaceful sleep. Imagine standing in the sun-baked plains of ancient Persia, the scent of dust mingling with the distant promise of empire. It's the 6th century BCE, a pivotal era when the Achaemenid Empire, stretching from the Balkans to the Indus Valley, forged a new paradigm of global power. At its heart lay an elite military unit, an enigma whispered through time, the Immortals. Our understanding of these legendary warriors primarily stems from classical Greek sources, most notably Herodotus's histories. He describes them as a standing army division, precisely 10,000 strong, whose ranks were instantaneously refilled upon loss, giving rise to their evocative moniker. This constant, unyielding number created an illusion of immortality on the battlefield, a psychological weapon as potent as any spear. Unlike many contemporary forces, the Immortals were not a temporary levy, but a professional, highly trained corps, maintained year-round. Recruitment into this prestigious unit wasn't merely about martial prowess. Herodotus indicates that membership was often restricted to Persians, Medes, or Elamites, suggesting a strong ethnocentric component to their composition, rooted in the Achaemenid heartland. Their equipment, as detailed by ancient accounts and corroborated by archaeological finds like those at Persepolis, included a linen cuirass, a scale armor tunic, a short spear with a silver apple or pomegranate counterweight, a bow and arrows housed in a quiver, and a dagger. The distinctive gold-adorned javelin butt for officers further distinguished their rank. These were not just soldiers. They were a meticulously organized, richly equipped royal guard, symbols of the great king's immense authority and the empire's material wealth. Their role extended beyond frontline combat. They served as an honor guard for the monarch, as depicted in the glazed brick reliefs from Darius I's palace at Susa, now housed in the Louvre. This dual function underscores their ceremonial and practical importance within the Achaemenid state, demonstrating their deep integration into the very fabric of imperial power. The very name, Immortals, though evocative, is a later attribution. The Achaemenid term for this unit remains debated among scholars. It's highly probable that the Greek term athanatoi, immortals, is a mistranslation or reinterpretation of an old Persian word, possibly anushia, followers, companions, or ambaraka, bearing the staff, emphasizing their close association with the king rather than a mythical ability to defy death. This linguistic nuance highlights the challenges historians face when reconstructing ancient civilizations primarily through external accounts. Beyond their symbolic role, the Immortals were a formidable fighting force, integral to the Achaemenid military machine that carved out one of the largest empires in history. Their participation in key campaigns is well documented. During Xerxes' invasion of Greece in 480 BCE, they formed the vanguard of his immense army, leading the force through the strategic choke point of the Hellespont. Their distinctive appearance and formidable numbers were intended to overawe the Greek city-states. The scale of Xerxes' expedition often leads to dramatic embellishments in classical texts. While Herodotus claims the Immortals marched into Greece en masse, historical analysis suggests that a significant portion would have remained guarding the royal estates and major administrative centers within the vast empire. Nonetheless, their participation in the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BCE is significant, showcasing their effectiveness against the determined Spartan defense. Despite their reputation, even the Immortals found themselves locked in a brutal stalemate, facing the disciplined hoplite phalanx in the narrow pass. This iconic engagement, which saw them eventually outflank the Greek forces, cemented their legend as elite shock troops. Their tactical deployment and role in major sieges and open-field battles demonstrate a versatile military unit, capable of adapting to diverse combat scenarios. The Immortals, therefore, were not merely a theatrical display, but a core component of Persian dominance. The question then arises: what constituted the rigorous training and upbringing that forged these elite warriors? Unlike the Spartan agoge, which is extensively documented, the precise educational system for Achaemenid Persian youths, particularly those destined for military service or the elite immortal corps, is less explicitly detailed in surviving primary sources. However, insights can be gleaned from scattered classical accounts and an understanding of Achaemenid social values. From the age of 5 to 20, Persian noble boys, and likely those aspiring to join the elite regiments, underwent a structured education known as the royal education or Persian upbringing. Xenophon, in his Cyropedia, albeit an idealized account, provides a vivid picture. He describes an environment where boys were trained in justice, moderation, and obedience, alongside rigorous physical discipline. Their days were filled with horsemanship, archery, and javelin throwing, skills critical for effective cavalry and infantry combat in the open terrain favored by Persian armies. They were taught to endure hardship, hunger, and thirst, key attributes for sustained campaigning across vast distances. This wasn't merely about physical prowess. The curriculum also emphasized truthfulness and respect for elders, underpinning the ethical framework of Achaemenid society. This comprehensive training ensured a steady supply of disciplined and capable recruits. For those aspiring to the Immortals, an additional layer of selection and specialized training would undoubtedly have been implemented. Archaeological evidence, such as relief carvings from Persepolis depicting archers and spearmen, corroborates the prominence of these skills. The meticulous attention to detail in their uniforms and weaponry, as observed in historical accounts, suggests that only the finest, most skilled and loyal individuals were deemed worthy of donning the immortal mantle. Thus, the foundation for these formidable soldiers was laid not on simple battle drills, but on a holistic upbringing that instilled both physical mastery and unwavering loyalty to the great king and the empire. The rigorous Persian upbringing, as described by ancient sources, laid the groundwork for a military philosophy centered on discipline, adaptability, and unwavering loyalty. This wasn't merely rote memorization of battle tactics. It was a comprehensive lifestyle designed to produce resilient and effective soldiers, capable of operating across the vast, diverse terrains of the Achaemenid Empire. For the Immortals, this foundation was amplified. Their training likely included advanced tactical instruction, focusing on formations, coordinated movements, and proficiency with their distinctive weaponry. While Herodotus broadly describes their equipment, detailed descriptions of their combat methods are sparse. However, artistic depictions and the nature of their arms suggest a versatile fighting style. The recurved bow, a powerful weapon, would have allowed them to engage enemies at a distance, softening formations before a close-quarters charge. Their short spears, possibly used in conjunction with a shield, indicate a capacity for disciplined melee combat. The agility afforded by their relatively light armor, compared to Greek hoplites, would have been crucial for rapid maneuver and flanking maneuvers. Furthermore, training would have emphasized psychological endurance. Campaigns stretched for months, sometimes years, across deserts, mountains, and unfamiliar territories. The ability to maintain morale, cohesion, and fighting effectiveness under such conditions was paramount. The constant maintenance of the unit's 10,000-man strength, with immediate replacements for any fallen or incapacitated soldier, fostered an unparalleled esprit de corps and an illusion of invincibility. This unbroken professional military force, always at the king's disposal, stood in stark contrast to the citizen militias prevalent in many other ancient societies. Their discipline, forged through years of dedicated training and reinforced by the elite nature of their unit, was not merely a military advantage, but a symbol of the great king's absolute power and the empire's enduring strength. Beyond their martial prowess and distinctive attire, the logistical support system for the Immortals and the wider Achaemenid army was a marvel of ancient engineering and administration, sustaining a force of 10,000 elite warriors, alongside a vast army across an empire stretching thousands of miles, required meticulous planning and execution. The taste of the warrior's ration for an immortal would have been markedly different from that of a common soldier, reflecting their elevated status and the resources dedicated to their maintenance. Primary sources, particularly those concerning Xerxes' expeditions, offer glimpses into the scale of provisioning. Herodotus mentions the immense burdens placed upon local populations to supply the Persian army, indicating a system of requisitioning or taxation in kind. However, for a standing professional force like the Immortals, a more organized and consistent supply chain would have been in place. This would involve a sophisticated network of royal granaries, supply depots, and transportation routes across the empire, utilizing both land and sea. Caravans of pack animals, camels, mules, and donkeys would have carried grain, dried fruits, preserved meats, and other necessities, moving along the royal roads that crisscross the Achaemenid realm. The Immortals, as the king's personal guard, likely received superior provisions. Their rations would have been more consistent, of higher quality, and included luxuries not afforded to others. Their diet would have been energy-rich, suitable for sustained physical exertion, consisting of items like wheat or barley flour for bread, lentils, dates, olive oil, and dried fish or meat. Water, especially in arid regions, was a critical concern, necessitating extensive planning for wells, cisterns, and water carriers. This sophisticated logistical infrastructure was a testament to the administrative genius of the Achaemenid Empire, enabling its military campaigns and maintaining its elite forces at peak readiness, even in the most challenging environments. Such detailed planning ensured that the Immortals, vital to the king's authority, were always well fed and prepared to defend the empire. The logistical challenge of feeding an army, especially one as vast and mobile as the Achaemenid forces, was immense. For the Immortals, their guaranteed supply chain meant they were largely insulated from the privations that often plagued less elite units. This consistent nourishment was not merely about survival. It was a critical component of maintaining peak physical performance and morale. Consider the diverse environments through which the Immortals campaigned. The burning deserts of Mesopotamia, the rugged mountains of Anatolia, and the verdant plains of the Mediterranean. Each terrain presented unique resupply challenges. The efficiency of the Persian royal road system, stretching over 2,500 kilometers from Susa to Sardis, was central to this. Along this arterial network, royal way stations and supply depots, managed by imperial administrators, would have ensured that provisions were available at strategic intervals. This infrastructure, often utilizing local labor and resources, facilitated rapid communication and the movement of goods and troops, crucial for a centrally governed empire. Beyond staple foods, the Immortals would have benefited from specialized provisions. Dried fruits like figs and dates, common in the Persian diet, offered quick energy and were easily transportable. Pulses such as lentils and chickpeas provided essential protein, while olive oil offered critical calories. Accounts from Xenophon, describing Cyrus the Younger's campaign, detail the strict discipline enforced regarding foraging, emphasizing the reliance on prepared provisions. This control over food sources prevented mass desertions and maintained unit cohesion, distinguishing a professional army from a rabble dependent on pillaging. This meticulous logistical framework, operating behind the scenes, was as vital to the Immortals' effectiveness as their training and weaponry, allowing them to project imperial power across a vast and challenging landscape. It was, in essence, the silent engine of their sustained dominance. As we turn our gaze to the battlefield, the Immortals' role was often multifaceted, reflecting their status as both elite shock troops and the king's personal guard. The weight of bronze and expectation they carried was not merely physical. It encompassed the psychological burden of representing the empire's ultimate military power. Their presence was intended to inspire fear in enemies and confidence in their own ranks. In military formations, the Immortals typically held pride of place, often forming the vanguard or acting as a strategic reserve. Herodotus details their role during Xerxes' invasion of Greece, where they were consistently at the forefront of major engagements. During the crossing of the Hellespont, they were among the first to traverse the massive pontoon bridges, a demonstration of their readiness and symbolic leadership. Tactically, their versatile weaponry, the kumziti bu for ranged attacks, and the short spear and dagger for close quarters, allowed for flexible deployment. They could unleash volleys of arrows to disrupt enemy formations before closing in for hand-to-hand combat. Their deployment at Thermopylae in 480 BCE exemplifies their operational role. Initially committed to direct assaults against the Spartan-led Greek phalanx in the narrow pass, they faced fierce resistance. When direct attacks proved costly, a contingent, guided by a local traitor, was dispatched through a mountain path to outflank the Greek defenders. This flanking maneuver, though not exclusively executed by Immortals, highlights the strategic thinking applied to their deployment and their capability to execute complex tactical movements. This adaptability, combined with their renowned discipline and superior equipment, made them a formidable force in both direct confrontation and sophisticated tactical operations, always bearing the profound expectation of securing victory for the great king. The Achaemenid Persian army, of which the Immortals were the elite corps, often employed tactics suitable for their vast numbers and varied troop compositions. Their art of silent formation suggests a level of precision and discipline that would have been critical for coordinated movements of such a large and diverse force. Unlike the rigid, chest-to-chest confrontation of Greek hoplites, Persian tactics often prioritized ranged attacks and strategic maneuver, aiming to break enemy morale and formations before engaging in close combat. The Immortals' primary formation, as described by classical authors, was 10 ranks deep. This depth provided a continuous stream of fresh warriors, bolstering the illusion of their immortality on the battlefield. When the front ranks thinned, those behind would immediately step forward, maintaining an unbroken line. This psychological effect, combined with the sheer visual impact of 10,000 identically armed and armored men, would have been devastating for psychologically unprepared adversaries. Their role was often to absorb the initial shock of battle, or to deliver a decisive blow after other units had weakened the enemy. The first few ranks of the Immortals would be heavily armored with their scaled tunics and wicker shields, creating a defensive screen. Behind them, archers could unleash volleys of arrows over the heads of their comrades, a tactic that required immense coordination and training to avoid friendly fire. This combined arms approach, leveraging both missile superiority and disciplined melee capacity, was a hallmark of the Achaemenid military. For instance, in the Battle of Plataea in 479 BCE, though ultimately a Persian defeat, the Immortals still presented a formidable front, engaging the Greeks with a combination of archery and spear fighting. This nuanced approach to combat, relying on both missile power and tightly disciplined formations, allowed the Achaemenid Empire to project its military power effectively across vast distances and against diverse opponents. Their silent, disciplined movements were not just a display of order, but a calculated and effective method of warfare. While disciplined formations and ranged attacks were cornerstones of immortal tactics, the reality of ancient warfare often devolved into chaotic, brutal close-quarters combat. The roar of the battlefield would have been a maelstrom of clashing bronze, shouting warriors, and the thud of bodies meeting steel, a test of individual bravery and the cohesion of the unit. At Thermopylae in 480 BCE, the Immortals experienced this brutal reality firsthand. Initially, they were sent against the narrow pass, a terrain that negated the Persian advantage in numbers and archery. The Spartan hoplites, fighting in a tight phalanx, were a wall of muscle and bronze. Herodotus describes the Immortals' initial assaults, where they were forced into a head-on confrontation. Their shorter spears and lighter armor were at a disadvantage against the longer dory and heavy aspis of the Greeks. The fierce resistance inflicted by the Spartans, despite their numerical inferiority, demonstrated that even the elite Immortals could be stalled by a determined and well-equipped foe in advantageous terrain. The sustained combat at Thermopylae required repeated charges and a relentless application of force. It was during these intense engagements that the individual training and discipline of the Immortals were put to the ultimate test. They were expected to hold their ground, to press the attack, and to die for the great king if necessary. The constant replacement of fallen soldiers, maintaining the mythical 10,000, would have blurred the lines between the individual and the unit, fostering a collective identity that prioritized the integrity of the Immortals above all else. This unwavering commitment was perhaps their most potent weapon in the cacophony and danger of the ancient battlefield, highlighting their role not just as elite soldiers, but as instruments of imperial will. On the ancient battlefield, the psychological aspect of warfare was often as decisive as physical strength or tactical brilliance. For the Immortals, their reputation, their disciplined movements, and their seemingly inexhaustible numbers contributed to an aura of invincibility designed to instill fear in their adversaries. This sea of men, as some classical descriptions portray the Achaemenid army with the Immortals at its forefront, was a terrifying spectacle. Yet, beyond the grand terrifying image, individual Immortals faced the universal soldier struggle, the balance between fear and duty. Their detailed training from early youth emphasized unwavering loyalty to the great king and the empire. This deeply ingrained sense of duty, coupled with the prestige of their unit, would have been a powerful counterweight to the inherent terror of combat. The immediate replacement system, ensuring the unit always numbered exactly 10,000, fostered a collective identity that transcended individual lives. Each immortal was part of an unbroken lineage, a living symbol of imperial continuity. This almost religious devotion to the unit's integrity blurred the lines between individual survival and the collective objective. However, historical records, even the often biased Greek accounts, occasionally hint at moments where even the immortals face significant reversals, particularly against well-organized and resolute opposition. While they were instrumental in numerous Persian campaigns, they were not truly immortal in the face of a superior tactical or numerical disadvantage, as seen in the Battle of Plataea in 479 BCE. There, segments of the immortals faced off against Greek hoplites in open terrain. Despite their efforts, including forming a defensive shield wall, they ultimately could not withstand the disciplined charge of the Greek phalanx. This demonstrated that while their discipline and high morale were potent, they were not immune to defeat. It clarifies that their immortality was a powerful psychological and organizational principle, rather than an unbreakable guarantee on the field of battle. Beyond the din of battle, the immortals played a crucial, often unseen role as the great king's personal guard. Whether at the opulent palaces of Persepolis and Susa or on campaign, their constant presence ensured the monarch's security. The chill of a desert night watch was a testament to their enduring vigilance, irrespective of the front lines. Their duties encompassed more than just combat. As the royal guard, they maintained order within the court, acted as ceremonial escorts during processions, and provided a formidable deterrent to internal and external threats against the Achaemenid ruler. This dual function as both household guard and frontline troops made them unique. Reliefs from Persepolis and Susa often depict the immortals in their distinctive attire, flanking the king, underscoring their ceremonial significance as symbols of royal power and legitimacy. They were custodians of the monarchy's physical safety and its prestige. Within the vast administrative structure of the Achaemenid Empire, the immortals also served as a visible manifestation of the king's authority. Their deployment to various satrapies or strategically important locations could serve as a clear message of imperial control and military presence. This deployment would often be in detachments, ensuring a widespread reach without diluting the core unit's strength. Unlike regular garrison troops, an immortal detachment would carry the full weight of the great king's personal backing. This constant, vigilant presence, whether protecting the king during a desert march or standing guard over his sleeping chambers, highlights the profound trust and critical responsibility placed upon these elite soldiers. Their loyalty was absolute, cultivated through a lifetime of dedicated service and the immense honor associated with their position. Guarding the great king, whether under the vast expanse of desert stars or within the intricate shadows of a palatial complex, demanded more than just vigilance against overt attack. The unseen threat of assassination, conspiracy, and internal dissent was a constant consideration, making the immortals' role as royal protectors a complex and highly specialized one. Their training would have extended beyond battlefield tactics to include close-quarters protection and intelligence gathering. While not explicitly detailed in ancient texts, the function of an elite royal guard historically involves a degree of security and counterintelligence work. They would be trained to identify suspicious individuals, recognize signs of sedition, and swiftly neutralize immediate threats to the monarch. Their privileged access to the king and court would also make them privy to sensitive information, underscoring the absolute trust placed in their loyalty. The immortals, residing close to the king, would effectively form the inner cordon of security, a human shield. Furthermore, the very composition of the immortals, often drawn from the Persian and Median aristocracy, or from families with deep loyalty to the Achaemenid dynasty, minimized the risk of internal betrayal. Membership was a prestigious position, offering significant social standing and potential for advancement, thereby creating a powerful incentive for unwavering loyalty. The meticulous replacement process for any fallen unit member, ensuring the perpetual 10,000, also helped maintain a consistent level of elite capability within the Guard. This continuous influx of rigorously vetted and trained individuals was crucial for uninterrupted security. Thus, under the silent watch of these elite guards, the stability of the Persian throne was maintained, navigating the treacherous currents of ancient imperial politics and projecting an image of unshakable power, both within and outside the royal court. The opulence surrounding the great king and his court extended to the immortals, particularly in their ceremonial roles. Far from being mere soldiers, they were a visible manifestation of Achaemenid wealth and power, often depicted in regalia that reflected their elite status. The touch of a royal garment, metaphorically speaking, adorned them, separating them from the common soldiery. Archaeological evidence and classical accounts paint a vivid picture of their ceremonial attire. The glazed brick reliefs from Darius I's palace at Susa, dating to around 510 BCE, are perhaps the most famous visual depictions. These reliefs, now in the Louvre Museum, show the immortals in their signature robes, richly coloured, often in yellow, white and blue hues, adorned with intricate patterns. They wear elaborate headwear, possibly a tiara or a felt cap. While their battle gear included linen cuirasses and scale armour, these ceremonial depictions emphasize their finery, suggesting that for formal occasions, their appearance was designed to impress and demonstrate imperial grandeur. Each immortal's spear was distinctive. Those of the infantry had a silver pomegranate as an emblem, while those of the officers bore a gold one. This unique detail, recorded by Herodotus, not only served as a practical differentiator, but also added to their visual splendor and reinforced their hierarchical structure. This use of precious metals on weaponry, even if symbolic, highlighted the immense resources at the great king's disposal and the value placed upon his personal guard. The immortals, therefore, were not just warriors. They were living embodiments of Achaemenid imperial might and artistic sophistication. Their elaborate appearance in ceremonies and processions served to awe both subjects and foreign dignitaries, solidifying the image of a powerful, magnificent empire. The immortals, by the very nature of their role, existed in a peculiar duality, granted unparalleled proximity to power through their royal guard duties, yet often distant from home, as they accompanied the great king on campaigns or resided in imperial capitals far from their familial lands. This juxtaposition shaped their identity and underscored their unique position within Achaemenid society. While serving the king, these elites enjoyed considerable prestige and likely material comforts, including superior housing, provisions, and access to royal court life. This privileged position would have been a significant incentive, reinforcing their loyalty. The architectural remains of royal palaces, particularly in Persepolis and Susa, demonstrate elaborate living quarters for various officials and guards, suggesting comfortable domestic arrangements for these high-status soldiers. Moreover, their connection to the king would have granted them influence and status that cascaded down to their families, strengthening their social standing within the empire's hierarchy. However, service to the great king meant significant personal sacrifice. Extended periods away from their native regions and families were a constant reality. For many, service was a lifelong commitment, from adolescence well into adulthood, removing them from the traditional agricultural or civic pursuits of their communities. This geographic and temporal dislocation fostered a strong internal camaraderie within the unit, creating a brotherhood forged through shared duty and unique experiences. They were a distinct social group, often separated from the general populace by their status, their martial training, and their proximity to the ultimate authority. This dual existence, balancing privilege with prolonged separation, defined the life of an immortal, tethering them inextricably to the destiny of the great king and the vast Achaemenid Empire. The Achaemenid Empire was an intricate tapestry of cultures and peoples united under the rule of the great king. For the immortals, stationed in primary cities or accompanying the monarch, the sounds of a distant city would have been a daily symphony of diverse languages, bustling markets, and the administrative hum of a vast empire. The immortals were regularly quartered in or near the major administrative and ceremonial centers of the Achaemenid Empire: Susa, Ecbatana, Persepolis, and Babylon. These ancient metropolitan hubs were not only centers of political power, but also thriving economic and cultural crossroads. Susa, for instance, a former Elamite capital, became one of the 4 Achaemenid capitals and was strategically located for trade and administration. Excavations at Susa have revealed the monumental scale of its royal complex, providing insights into the daily life of the court and its protectors. For the immortals stationed in such cities, their duties extended beyond mere ceremonial guard duty. They would have played a role in maintaining imperial order, assisting satraps, and ensuring the smooth functioning of the immense bureaucratic apparatus. Their presence served as a constant reminder of the king's authority, even in far-flung regions. The logistical mechanisms to support an army in the field, as discussed in previous chapters, were mirrored in the fixed garrisons within these cities. Granaries, administrative buildings, and communication networks were all essential components of supporting this elite force. Their exposure to the diverse cultures and administrative intricacies of these hubs would have further broadened their understanding of the empire they served, making them not just warriors, but integral functionaries in the complex machinery of Achaemenid governance. Their unique blend of military and courtly duties firmly placed them at the heart of imperial power and its dissemination. Despite their immersion in the cosmopolitan centers of the Achaemenid Empire, the immortals would have carried echoes of home with them, even as they walked foreign streets. Their primary identity remained rooted in their Persian, Median, or Elamite heritage, and their unique uniform and living arrangements would have reinforced a distinct community, separate from the local populations. Archaeological insights from sites like Persepolis, famously sacked by Alexander the Great, offer glimpses into the cultural fabric surrounding the immortals. The treasury reliefs, for example, depict various tribute bearers from across the empire, showcasing the incredible cultural diversity. Yet, the central figures and the architecture itself remain distinctly Persian. This suggests that while interacting with diverse cultures, the core identity of the immortals, and indeed the imperial power they represented, was firmly maintained. Their native language, Achaemenid Old Persian, would have been spoken among themselves, and their religious practices centered on Zoroastrianism, would have remained distinct from the polytheistic traditions prevalent in many conquered lands. Furthermore, the Immortals likely lived in separate quarters or barracks when stationed in cities, maintaining their distinct military community. This not only served practical purposes of discipline and readiness, but also preserved their cultural cohesion amidst the myriad influences of multicultural urban centers. This separation would reinforce their elite status and prevent direct assimilation into local cultures. While they operated within new environments, their cultural and social ties to their origins were maintained through their unit structure and continued interaction with the Persian imperial system. They were a constant, unchanging force, a symbol of Persian presence and authority, even in the most distant corners of the empire. This steadfast identity, amidst a changing world, underscores their enduring commitment to their sacred duty serving the great king. While the Immortals represented the pinnacle of Achaemenid military power and a symbol of royal authority, their lives were not without rigorous discipline and, at times, harsh enforcement. The concept of the sting of a training lash serves as a stark reminder that even elite units were subject to strict controls, ensuring their readiness and unwavering obedience. Ancient Persian education, even for noble youth, was known for its emphasis on discipline and physical rigor. Xenophon's Cyropaedia speaks of public floggings for boys who failed to meet standards, suggesting that physical punishment was an accepted method of enforcing discipline. While direct evidence of routine corporal punishment specifically for the Immortal unit is scarce, it aligns with broader ancient military practices and the severe consequences for dereliction of duty in any professional army. The maintenance of a 10,000-strong unit, always at peak effectiveness, demanded strict adherence to rules and standards. A lapse in drill, a failure in battle, or insubordination would not be tolerated in such a prestigious and critical unit. This discipline was essential not only for battlefield performance, but also for maintaining order within the royal court. As the king's personal guard, any sign of laxity or disloyalty would have immediate and severe repercussions. The power of life and death often rested with the king and his immediate commanders, serving as extensions of his will. The threat of punishment, whether physical or social, would have been a powerful motivator for these elite soldiers to consistently live up to the immense expectations placed upon them. Thus, the rigid structure and potential for severe penalties served as a constant reminder that their elevated status came with an equally elevated expectation of absolute conduct, ensuring their perpetual readiness for both parade ground and battlefield. The demanding nature of Achaemenid military life, particularly for an elite unit like the Immortals, instilled a profound emphasis on endurance as a virtue, pain as a teacher. This Stoic philosophy, born from years of rigorous training and campaigning, forged resilient warriors capable of extreme physical and psychological hardship. Persian military training, as alluded to by classical authors, was designed to harden recruits. For young men destined for the Immortals, this early conditioning would have been paramount. They were taught to withstand harsh conditions, long marches under the scorching sun, bitter cold nights, and prolonged periods of hunger and thirst. Much like the Roman legions who marched 20 miles a day carrying heavy packs, the Achaemenid training would have focused on building stamina and resilience, crucial for operating across the empire's vast and varied terrains. This wasn't merely about physical fitness, but about mental fortitude, the ability to push past limits and maintain functionality in debilitating circumstances. The constant threat of enemy action, even during peacetime, reinforced this culture of endurance. The Immortals, serving as the king's guard, were always on alert, whether guarding palaces, escorting the monarch, or engaged in training exercises. Any failure of endurance or discipline could have dire consequences, not just for the individual, but for the great king himself. Thus, the physical discomfort and exacting standards of their training were not arbitrary cruelties, but essential methods for building the unyielding resolve expected of the empire's premier fighting force. The experience of pain as a teacher would have been a daily reality, shaping them into individuals who valued stoicism and unwavering determination, qualities epitomized by their immortal reputation. This relentless pursuit of perfection ensured the Immortals remained, for centuries, a formidable and awe-inspiring military elite. The presence of the great king on the battlefield, or even in his ceremonial processions, was often marked by a collection of sacred symbols and standards. For the Immortals, the sight of the king's standard was not just a rallying point, but a deeply significant manifestation of the divine authority they served, embodying the very essence of the Achaemenid Empire. Among the most important of these standards was the royal standard, sometimes depicted as an eagle or another animal perched atop a pole, but most famously, the Sharpati, or king's face. Herodotus explicitly mentions the sacred fire that accompanied the king's army, guarded by Magi, suggesting a strong religious dimension to their campaigns. Furthermore, the great king himself, often visible from a distance, was the ultimate embodiment of Ahura Mazda's blessing and power. The Immortals, as his personal guard, would always be in close proximity to these central symbols, serving as their direct protectors. This direct association with the king and his divine mandate was a core element of the Immortals' identity and motivation. Their loyalty was not merely to a human leader, but to the institution of the Achaemenid monarchy, chosen by the supreme deity Ahura Mazda. Seeing the king's standards rise above the battle lines, or witnessing the king himself in his golden chariot, or on his royal throne, reinforced their divine mission and their role as instruments of imperial will. In a pre-modern world, where religious and political authority were inextricably linked, the Immortals' duty transcended mere military service. They were guardians of a sacred order, and the standards they defended were tangible reminders of this profound responsibility. Their willingness to fight and die for these symbols ensured the continued supremacy of the great king and the Achaemenid dominion. The Immortal standards, beyond the royal emblem, extended to their very uniforms and the distinct markings that identified their subunits. This visual cohesion, the unity in colors, was deeply intertwined with their purpose in gold, signifying not only their elite status, but also their direct link to the boundless wealth and authority of the Achaemenid great king. Herodotus provides a key detail: the silver and gold pomegranates or apples adorning the butt spikes of their spears. This was not merely decorative, it was a potent symbol of rank and unit identity. The silver pomegranates designated the rank-and-file infantry, while the gold ones were reserved for officers. This subtle yet significant distinction ensured immediate recognition of command structure on a chaotic battlefield and during ceremonial parades. The use of precious metals underscored the king's immense resources and the value placed upon his elite guard. Such elaborate detailing on what was fundamentally a weapon served as a public display of wealth and power, signaling the Immortals' privileged position within the Achaemenid military hierarchy. Beyond the spear ornaments, while specifics of unit colors are not extensively detailed in classical texts, the general uniformity implied by Herodotus and depicted in the Susa reliefs suggests a standardized appearance. This visual unity, whether achieved through color-coded garments or shared regalia, created an imposing and disciplined front, reinforcing the perception of an unbreakable force. This standardized display contributed to their psychological impact, signaling a highly organized professional army directly backed by imperial might. The Immortals, arrayed in their distinctive attire, radiating both disciplined unity and the subtle gleam of gold, were living testaments to the Achaemenid Empire's dominion, a symbol of power both absolute and aesthetically magnificent. Despite their ceremonial grandeur and prestigious duties, the Immortals were first and foremost warriors, defined by their readiness for combat. Battlefield encounters were inevitable, and the smell of iron and blood was a grim reality they faced, demonstrating their practical application as a lethal force. Throughout the numerous Achaemenid campaigns, the Immortals were regularly deployed wherever the great king's presence was most needed or threats were greatest. From campaigns in Egypt and India to the wars against the Greek city-states, their spear pomegranates shimmered on battlefields stretching across 3 continents. Their engagements were not always decisive victories, yet their role as the king's chosen troops meant they were expected to perform with unwavering courage and effectiveness. Even when facing a superior tactical system, such as the Greek phalanx, their individual and collective resilience shone through. At the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BCE, after the initial direct assaults proved costly against the Spartan defences, it was a significant portion of the Immortals who were redirected to the flanking manoeuvre, guided by Ephialtes. This required arduous march through mountainous terrain, away from the main battle, culminating in a dawn attack on the heavily fortified Greek rear. This operational flexibility, a hallmark of elite units, underscores their training beyond mere parade ground drills. While ultimately leading to the Greek defeat in the pass, it was a costly battle for the Immortals too, demonstrating the brutal realities of ancient combat even for the most seasoned warriors. It was in such crucibles of conflict that the legend of the Immortals was forged, proving that their elite status was earned through blood and steel, not merely through courtly favour. This practical function as instruments of war, not just symbols, was fundamental to their existence. The relentless cycle of imperial expansion and defence ensured that the Immortals frequently participated in battles, confronting an unsparing adversary in the grim harvest of conflict. Despite their elite status and rigorous training, the battlefield spared no one, and even these famed warriors faced mortality. While the immortal moniker suggested an unceasing force of 10,000, individual immortals unquestionably fell in battle. The immediate and seamless replacement of these casualties was a cornerstone of their legend. This constant refilling of ranks meant that the unit as a whole never diminished, creating the illusion of invincibility. However, it also signifies the heavy price paid by its members. Battles like those against the Scythians in Central Asia, where the Persians suffered heavy losses, or the later encounters with the Greeks, highlight the inherent dangers of their profession. Each replacement represented a life lost, a family grieving, and a vacancy filled by a new, equally dedicated warrior. The scale of Alexander the Great's conquest of the Achaemenid Empire in the late 4th century BCE undoubtedly led to the ultimate, devastating engagement of the Immortals. At battles such as Issus, 333 BCE, and Gaugamela, 331 BCE, the Immortals formed a crucial part of the Persian lines, fighting against the highly disciplined Macedonian phalanx and cavalry. Despite their courage and tactical skill, the combined arms approach of Alexander's forces, coupled with his innovative strategies, proved overwhelming. While detailed casualty figures for the Immortals specifically are scarce, the overall Persian losses were catastrophic, signaling the end of the Achaemenid Empire and with it, the independent existence of its famed Immortal Guard. This grim harvest, though devastating, enshrined their place in history as dedicated, formidable warriors who fought to the last for their great king and empire. Beyond individual prowess and rigid discipline, the effectiveness and psychological resilience of any elite military unit depend profoundly on the bonds forged between its members. For the Immortals, the feel of a comrade's hand would have signified not just physical proximity in tight formations, but a deep, unshakable trust cultivated through years of shared hardship and common purpose. The rigorous and immersive Persian upbringing, starting from a young age, would have fostered strong ties among recruits long before they joined the Immortals. As they progressed through various stages of military education, living, training, and eating together, these young men would have developed an unbreakable esprit de corps. For those selected for the Immortals, this bond would have intensified. They were not just colleagues, but members of an exclusive brotherhood, selected for their loyalty, skill, and physical prowess. This shared identity and mutual reliance were crucial on the battlefield. In the chaos of combat, where individual fears could overwhelm, the presence of trusted comrades fighting shoulder to shoulder could transform terror into collective resolve. The Immortal unit's ability to instantaneously replace casualties further cemented this group identity. Individual lives were secondary to the integrity of the unit. This profound understanding would have meant that every Immortal fought not just for the king and the empire, but for the honor and continuity of the 10,000. The sense of belonging to this perpetually strong, unbroken force would have been a powerful motivator, ensuring that each member upheld the unit's legendary reputation. This camaraderie, this unspoken promise of mutual support, was arguably as vital as their weapons and armor in ensuring their sustained effectiveness and legendary status throughout the Achaemenid Empire's history. It was the human element binding a formidable fighting force. The cohesion and internal strength of the Immortals were not merely incidental. They were a direct result of their unique recruitment, training, and the environment they inhabited. This brotherhood forged in fire refers to the crucible of shared experiences, from rigorous training to the trauma of battle, that solidified their bonds and amplified their collective effectiveness. This deep camaraderie extended beyond mere professional cooperation. It was a social and psychological anchor for individuals operating far from their homes, in a constant state of readiness. The structured nature of the unit, with its clear hierarchy and emphasis on immediate replacement, fostered a sense of collective responsibility and perpetual existence. Each Immortal knew that their life and the efficacy of the unit depended on the actions and reliability of those around them. This mutual dependency naturally led to fierce loyalty within the ranks. Commanders, often promoted from within, would have known their men intimately, further reinforcing these bonds. Moreover, the Immortals' perceived invincibility, whether mythical or a result of their immediate replacement system, certainly contributed to their esprit de corps. Being part of a unit that seemingly defied death would instill immense pride and confidence. This collective identity, reinforced by shared uniform, distinct weaponry, and a common purpose, made them a formidable psychological as well as physical force. The fire in which this brotherhood was forged included not only the flames of battle, but also the relentless discipline, the shared meals, the long marches under the unforgiving sun, and the quiet watches under alien stars. These common trials transformed individuals into an unbreakable collective, bound by honor and a singular dedication to the great king and the vast Achaemenid Empire. This potent combination of rigorous training, social cohesion, and unwavering loyalty fundamentally underpinned the legendary status of the Persian Immortals. The Achaemenid Empire's long and dominant reign was marked by numerous military conquests, and the Immortals played a pivotal role in enforcing imperial will. For countless smaller kingdoms and city-states across the Near East, the arrival of the Persian army, with the Immortals at its core, meant not just defeat, but often the silence of the vanquished, an end to their independence and a subjugation to the great king. The psychological impact of the Immortals alone must have been immense. Their seemingly endless ranks, their distinctive, often glittering appearance, and their reputation as the king's personal, unyielding fighting force would have been devastating for morale. Many cities and territories likely surrendered with minimal resistance, choosing submission over the terrifying prospect of facing such an elite force. The efficiency of the Persian military machine symbolized by the Immortals allowed for rapid expansion and consolidation of power, often turning defiance into swift and brutal suppression. Consider the various campaigns across Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Levant, where Achaemenid power was established or re-established. While specific battles details involving the Immortals are not always recorded for every provincial engagement, their presence in the initial shock troops and as integral parts of the royal retinue ensured their participation in the conquest and pacification of new territories. Their disciplined advance and coordinated attacks would have overwhelmed less organized or motivated forces, leading to swift defeats and often the absorption of the conquered into the vast Achaemenid administrative system. The quiet that descended after such conquests was not merely peace, but the enforced order of an undisputed imperial power, a silence echoing with the suppression of local identities under the banner of the great king. Their very appearance was a display of irreversible imperial might. While the Immortals were instrumental in numerous Persian triumphs, the expansion and maintenance of the vast Achaemenid Empire came with significant challenges. The burden of victory often involved extensive occupation duties, suppressing revolts, and constant vigilance, while the cost of empire was levied in resources, manpower, and the ultimate exhaustion that would contribute to its decline. For the Immortals, the cost was measured in relentless campaigning, continuous training, and the inherent dangers of their profession. Even in victory, the challenges were immense, securing vast territories, enforcing imperial decrees, and collecting tribute. These duties often required extended deployments away from the Persian heartland, transforming these elite fighters into imperial policemen and administrators. The unit's perpetual 10,000-man strength meant constant recruitment and training of replacements, maintaining a high operational tempo that, over centuries, placed an immense strain on resources and human capital. This was not a force that could ever truly rest. Despite their discipline and perceived invincibility, the Immortals ultimately participated in the final dramatic acts of the Achaemenid Empire against Alexander the Great. Their effectiveness was diminished over time, not necessarily by a decline in their own quality, but by the changing nature of warfare and the growing vulnerabilities of the empire they served. The Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE stands as a stark testament to this. There, the Immortals, fighting fiercely in the center of Darius III's line, could not withstand the strategic brilliance and tactical superiority of Alexander's Macedonian forces. Their defeat, while heroic in its resistance, symbolized the broader collapse of Achaemenid power. The Immortals, whose very name implied eternity, ultimately met their end with the empire they had so faithfully served for 2 centuries. Their legacy, though, endures as a testament to the might and organization of ancient Persia. Even amidst the relentless demands of imperial service and the constant threat of conflict, the Immortals were not exempt from the need for social connection and camaraderie. The warmth of a shared fire symbolizes the moments of respite, the bonding over meals, and the exchange of stories that reinforce the human element behind their formidable reputation. Away from the parade grounds and battlefields, these elite soldiers would have spent countless hours together in barracks, encampments, and on long marches. While strict discipline was paramount, these shared experiences would inevitably have fostered deep personal relationships. The stories told around a campfire, the sharing of rations, the humor and solace found in common hardship were vital for maintaining morale and psychological well-being. This informal social structure, built upon the formal military framework, underpinned the resilience of the unit. Moreover, the Immortals, drawn from the Persian and Median heartlands, likely shared a common cultural background, language, and often family connections. This shared heritage would have created a natural bond, bridging the gap between simply serving in the same unit and truly being a brotherhood. The king's immediate concern was their loyalty and effectiveness, but for the soldiers themselves, these personal connections would have made the arduous life of an immortal bearable, and, at times, even fulfilling. The unique prestige of their unit also meant that a shared identity as an immortal conferred status, reinforcing their sense of belonging to an exclusive group. These moments of human connection, essential to any military unit, ensured that the Immortals remained not just a fighting force, but a cohesive community united by a common destiny under the great king. It is in these moments, by a shared fire, that the human side of their legend truly emerges. As the Achaemenid Empire expanded, its soldiers, including the Immortals, found themselves in diverse and often alien landscapes. Marching across continents, they would have paused, establishing temporary encampments where stories under a foreign moon would have captivated them. Tales carried from distant homelands or new narratives born of their extraordinary experiences. These moments of shared storytelling, whether personal anecdotes or traditional folklore, were essential for maintaining cultural identity and unit cohesion, particularly when far from the Persian heartland. While the official language of the Achaemenid court was Old Persian, the Immortals would have encountered a multitude of languages and customs across their deployment. Their unique position meant they were exposed to more of the vast tapestry of the empire than most, yet their core identity as Persians was paramount. Recounting tales of Persian heroes, of the glory of their king, or even humorous incidents from their campaigns would have reinforced their shared heritage and purpose. The imagery of a foreign moon underscores the geographical breadth of their travels. Immortals would have seen the crescent over the Nile, the full orb over the plains of Anatolia, and the stars blazing above the deserts of Bactria. Each new vista presented a challenge to their sense of home, making the internal bonds forged by shared stories and common identity even more critical. These narrative exchanges would also have acted as a form of cultural transmission, keeping the values and history of Persia alive within the unit, even as new experiences shaped their worldview. For these elite warriors, the act of sharing stories was not just entertainment. It was a powerful ritual of grounding and belonging, a vital artery for morale and reinforcing the psychological strength necessary to carry out their duties across an immense and diverse empire. The ability to move large numbers of troops and their accompanying logistical support across vast distances was fundamental to Achaemenid imperial power. For the Immortals, this meant an intimate familiarity with the rhythm of the march, the coordinated, disciplined movement that characterized their strategic deployment and sustained their presence across the empire. Ancient Persian military logistics, while not as overtly documented as those of later empires, were remarkably effective. The royal roads, established by Darius the First, spanning thousands of kilometers, were not just for messengers, but crucial arteries for troop movements. The Immortals, as a professional standing army, would have been highly trained in forced marches, maintaining formation, and enduring the rigors of long-distance travel. Their equipment, though ceremonial at court, was practical for campaigning, suggesting that their daily gear was designed for both fighting and marching efficiency. The rhythmic thump of boots, the creak of equipment, and the synchronized breathing of thousands of men moving as one would have been a constant backdrop to their lives. This collective pace ensured cohesion, minimizing stragglers and maintaining order even over rough terrain. Such disciplined movement was essential for surprise attacks, rapid reinforcements, or simply covering significant ground to reach a new deployment. Maintaining this rhythm required constant practice and individual endurance, honed from their early education. It also speaks to a leadership structure capable of orchestrating military movements on an almost unprecedented scale for its time. The Immortals, at the forefront of the Achaemenid military machine, embodied this operational excellence, proving that a formidable fighting force was as much about its ability to move efficiently as it was about its capacity to fight heroically. Their steady march was the pulse of the empire. The Achaemenid Empire's immense geographical span meant that military campaigns often involved traversing vast distances, pushing men and logistics to their limits. For the Immortals, the vista of endless horizons was a regular sight, demanding an unyielding pace that was as much a testament to their physical conditioning as it was to superb organization. The royal roads, a network of well-maintained routes, facilitated rapid movement and communication across the empire. While these roads were excellent for swift messengers and imperial administration, troop movements, especially of an army numbering in the hundreds of thousands, were still a monumental undertaking. The Immortals, as the elite guard, would lead by example, maintaining discipline and speed. Their marches often entailed covering 25 to 30 kilometers, around 15-18 miles a day, a formidable distance over varied terrain, especially in full gear, and under the harsh sun of the Near East. This consistent rate of advance was crucial for strategic deployment, allowing the great king to project power quickly to rebellious satrapies or to meet external threats. This unyielding pace was not just about physical endurance. It was a psychological weapon. The rapid appearance of a large, disciplined Persian force, spearheaded by the Immortals, could often preempt resistance or break enemy morale before battle was even joined. Supply lines, though meticulously planned, were always vulnerable. Therefore, the ability of the troops to cover ground swiftly reduced the strain on logistical support and minimized exposure to ambush. The Immortals, with their comprehensive training from youth, were uniquely prepared for this kind of relentless travel. Their unwavering adherence to the march pace was a silent demonstration of their absolute commitment and further solidified their reputation as a force that was always on the move, always ready, always present across the vast, impressive expanse of the Achaemenid dominion. While disciplined and loyal, the Immortals, like any soldiers of their era, operated within a system where conquest often came with material reward. The glint of gold from captured spoils and the lure of loot were undeniable motivations, providing a tangible benefit to their arduous service, albeit within the strictures of Achaemenid military protocol. In ancient warfare, the spoils of victory were a customary part of military campaigns. For the Achaemenid army, this would have included a share of the treasures from conquered cities, tribute from subjugated regions, and a portion of any valuable goods captured from enemy armies, while the great king claimed the lion's share, and royal treasuries like those at Persepolis swelled with tribute. A system of rewards would have been in place for the fighting forces. For elite units like the Immortals, these rewards would likely have been more substantial, befitting their status and contribution. The gold and silver pomegranates on their spears were not just symbols. They were perhaps subtle indicators of this material benefit, a permanent mark of their privileged standing. Campaigns against wealthy regions, such as the Greek cities or the opulent kingdoms of the Levant, would undoubtedly have offered significant opportunities for plunder. However, it's crucial to understand that such loot was likely distributed in an organized manner, preventing undisciplined pillaging commonly associated with less structured armies. Discipline and order were paramount in the Achaemenid military, and the Immortals, as the king's guard, would have been expected to uphold these standards, even amidst the chaos of conquest. The prospect of such rewards, combined with other incentives like land grants or promotions, would have further cemented their allegiance and motivation to serve the empire with unwavering dedication. The material benefits weren't simply greedy acquisition, but a reinforcement of their elite status, both on and off the battlefield. The life of a soldier on campaign, particularly in a conquering army, was inevitably fraught with temptations. For the Immortals, the challenge was to balance the natural human desires for gain and relief with the stringent demands of discipline on campaign. Maintaining order among such a large and diverse army, let alone its elite contingent, was a continuous administrative and moral effort. Achaemenid military leadership understood that unbridled plunder could lead to chaos and a breakdown of command. Therefore, while rewards for success were part of the system, strict protocols were in place to manage the acquisition and distribution of spoils. Commanders would have designated officials responsible for collecting and apportioning loot, with the largest shares going to the king, then to high-ranking officers, and finally, a smaller portion to the common soldiers. This centralized control helped prevent mass desertion for individual gain and ensured that the army remained a fighting force rather than a disorganized rabble. For the Immortals, as the most disciplined segment, adherence to these rules would have been even more strictly enforced, setting an example for the rest of the army. Moreover, the Immortals' role as royal guards meant they had a vested interest in the long-term stability and wealth of the empire, rather than short-term gains from indiscriminate pillaging. Their training emphasized loyalty and duty above personal enrichment, fostering a culture where collective discipline triumphed over individual temptation. Accounts from Xenophon, describing Cyrus the Younger's army, highlight instances where severe penalties were meted out for unauthorized looting, underscoring the importance of maintaining order and discipline even in enemy territory. This blend of regulated reward and strict enforcement ensured that the Immortals, despite the glint of gold, remained focused on their primary objectives: the king's safety and the empire's expansion. Their unwavering discipline, even amidst the chaos of conquest, was a foundational pillar of Achaemenid military power. The Achaemenid military system, particularly for its elite units like the Immortals, relied on a highly structured chain of command and effective communication. Orders from the great king, filtered down through the ranks, were critical for coordinating movements, tactics, and ensuring discipline. Therefore, the echo of a commander's voice was not just a sound, but a vital link in the intricate machinery of imperial power. Within the Immortals, the command structure would have been precise. Herodotus mentions the Chiliarchs, or commander of 1,000, indicating a decimal organizational system. This suggests a hierarchy likely comprising commanders of 10, 100, and 1,000 men, culminating in the overall commander of the Immortals, a highly trusted and influential figure in the great king's inner circle. This clear structure ensured that orders could be rapidly disseminated and understood throughout the unit, even across the din and confusion of battle. Communication on the ancient battlefield relied heavily on vocal commands, trumpets, drums, and visual signals. The Immortals, due to their disciplined training, would have been expected to respond instantly and precisely to such commands. This responsiveness was crucial for executing complex maneuvers such as changing formation, repositioning archers, or launching a coordinated charge. The effectiveness of a unit 10,000 strong lay not just in individual bravery, but in its ability to act as a single, coordinated entity under the direction of its leaders. Maintaining such tight control in battle was paramount, as exemplified by the Immortals' ability to execute flanking movements and sustained assaults under heavy pressure. This reliance on the immediate and unquestioning obedience to a commander's voice demonstrates the rigorous discipline and hierarchical order that define the Immortals, ensuring their continued operational effectiveness and legendary status. The lives of the Immortals were wholly intertwined with the dictates of their commanders, from the great king himself down to the centurions. When orders received cascaded down the hierarchy, they carried the weight of imperial authority, and their execution fundamentally transformed the lives of subjects, allies, and enemies alike across the vast Achaemenid Empire. The nature of these orders varied widely, reflecting the multifaceted roles of the Immortals. On the battlefield, it could be a command to form a shield wall, unleash a volley of arrows, or execute a decisive charge. Each such directive, born from strategic planning, would irrevocably alter the course of an engagement, potentially saving or costing thousands of lives. In the royal courts, orders might pertain to ceremonies, guarding the king, or acting as imperial envoys, tasks that, while not directly combat-oriented, were critical for projecting power and maintaining internal stability. A simple command to deploy a detachment of Immortals to a distant satrapy, for instance, signaled the king's active interest and reinforced order, transforming a potentially rebellious province back into compliance. The Immortals were not merely military operatives. They were instruments of policy. Their presence, their uniform, and their unwavering discipline served as constant reminders of the great king's reach and ultimate authority. The psychological impact of receiving an order carried out by the Immortals would have been profound, whether it was to disarm a rebellious city, extract a tribute, or protect a royal caravan. Their role was to enact the king's will with absolute efficiency and minimal questioning. This unquestioning obedience to received orders, honed through years of training, was the very essence of their disciplined effectiveness, showcasing how their unit impacted not just battles, but the daily reality of subjects and rivals throughout the Achaemenid world. The vast Achaemenid Empire encompassed an astonishing array of topographies, from fertile river valleys to towering mountain ranges. But it was the arid and semi-arid regions that dominated much of its heartland. For the Immortals, campaigning involved frequent exposure to the bite of the desert wind, a relentless environmental challenge that fostered extreme resilience. The Persian plateau itself, alongside large swathes of Mesopotamia and Central Asia, is characterized by its harsh desert or steppe climate. Summers are brutally hot, and winters can be surprisingly cold, with winds that whip up sand and dust, drastically reducing visibility and creating discomfort. Troops traversing these regions would face dehydration, sunstroke, and sand blindness. Water sources would be sparse and often unreliable, necessitating meticulous planning for its transportation and conservation. Even during winter, the biting winds could lead to hypothermia for exposed soldiers. The Immortals, hardened by years of training that emphasized endurance, would have been better prepared than most to face these environmental extremes. Their discipline would have extended to strict water rationing, proper clothing layering against sharp temperature drops, and the construction of effective temporary shelters. Their experience in these conditions would become a strategic advantage against enemies less accustomed to such hardships. For instance, campaigns against the nomadic Scythians demonstrated the need for a force that could operate in environments hostile to settled civilizations. The ability to endure and perform effectively in a landscape where survival itself was a daily struggle was a significant factor in the Achaemenid military success in consolidating and maintaining control over its extensive domains. This relentless natural adversary, the desert wind, was as much a part of their training regimen as any parade ground drill. Operating across the colossal Achaemenid Empire meant confronting not only human adversaries, but also the relentless forces of nature. The Immortals consistently battled against elements against will, their very survival often depending on enduring survival against odds, imposed by unforgiving landscapes and weather. From the scorching sands of Egypt to the snow-capped mountains of the Caucasus, the Immortals' campaigns were a continuous test of acclimatization and adaptation. The logistical ingenuity of the Achaemenid administration was crucial here, but ultimately, it was the individual soldier's resilience that determined success. Expeditions, such as Darius I's infamous Scythian campaign, highlighted the dangers of deep penetration into unfamiliar and hostile environments. Though not a decisive victory, the army survived against immense environmental challenges, a testament to its collective grit. Xenophon's later account of the 10,000 Greeks traveling through Persian territories further illuminates the extreme difficulties of traversing the region, even under generally benign circumstances. The Immortals' specific training would have ingrained in them an almost instinctive ability to conserve resources, find shelter, and maintain health in adverse conditions. Their martial discipline extended to self-preservation, with every Immortal understanding the critical importance of remaining operational. This included understanding local flora and fauna for sustenance, basic wilderness medicine, and adapting to local customs to facilitate foraging or temporary alliances. Unlike mercenary forces, whose cohesion might dissolve under extreme duress, the Immortals' deeply instilled loyalty and brotherhood served as powerful psychological buffers against despair in the face of overwhelming natural adversity. They learned to respect the land, even as they conquered it. This supreme adaptability against nature's raw power ensured that the Immortals remained a force capable of global projection, a true embodiment of the Empire's unyielding reach. Even the most disciplined warriors, far from their origins, would carry within them the persistent yearning for what they left behind. For the Immortals, across their vast deployments, the vision of home in a dream represented a powerful, if subconscious, connection to their roots, the familiar landscapes, the loved ones, and the cultural touchstones that defined their personal identities. While their life was one of service to the great king and the empire, the Immortals were still men, drawn from specific regions, families, and communities, predominantly Persian and Median. Their rigorous training instilled loyalty to the state, but personal attachments and memories would have remained. Letters, though rare for common soldiers, would have been exchanged, and the thought of returning to their birthplace would have been a pervasive undercurrent. The Achaemenid system of land grants and rewards for loyal service, including military endeavors, would often include a return to their original properties or new states within the empire, providing a tangible goal for their service. This prospect of returning to a stable, prosperous home after military duty was crucial for morale and recruitment. The empire's reach, spanning from Greece to India, meant that many Immortals would spend years, if not decades, away from their ancestral lands. The memory of home, whether it was the bustling streets of Ecbatana, the agricultural fields of Parsa, or a quiet village nestled in the Zagros Mountains, would have been a significant psychological aspect of their daily lives. In their rare moments of true rest, perhaps under a foreign moon, these vivid dreams and memories would have reaffirmed their identity and provided solace, anchoring them to a life beyond the constant demands of military service. This personal dimension humanizes these legendary figures, reminding us that behind the bronze and the legend were individuals with hopes, memories, and the enduring vision of a cherished home. Despite their fearsome reputation and the ingrained loyalty expected of them, the Immortals were not immune to the universal human experience of longing for peace. Yet, this desire was perpetually underscored by the unyielding imperative of being bound by duty to the great king and the vast Achaemenid dominion. This tension between personal desire and imperial service defined much of their existence. The Achaemenid Empire was not perpetually at war. There were periods of relative peace, particularly during the reigns of strong kings who consolidated their conquests. During these times, the Immortals would primarily serve as royal guards in the capital cities or as garrisons in key strategic locations. While still under strict military discipline, these intervals would have offered a different quality of life, perhaps allowing for more stable family lives for married soldiers or greater engagement with civic duties for those from noble backgrounds. However, even in peacetime, their readiness for deployment remained paramount, a constant reminder of their primary function. The commitment of the Immortals was lifelong, from their rigorous upbringing to their eventual retirement, likely with land grants and pensions. This system inherently bound them to ongoing service. Their training instilled a deep sense of dina, duty, and adherence to asha, truth, order, core tenets of Zoroastrianism, the probable state religion of Achaemenid Persia. This religious and cultural foundation reinforced their obligation to the king, who was seen as Ahura Mazda's chosen ruler. While the individual immortal might dream of a quiet life back home, away from battlefields and palace intrigue, their entire existence was structured around serving the empire. Their very identity was forged in service, demonstrating that for these paramount warriors, personal aspirations were always secondary to the greater and often brutal demands of maintaining a vast and powerful empire. This profound sense of duty, rather than any literal immortality, defined the enduring legacy of the Persian Immortals. Centuries after the fall of the Achaemenid Empire, the myth and reality of the Persian Immortals continue to resonate, leaving an indelible mark on history and popular culture. The legacy of the immortal is not merely a footnote in military history, but a testament to the organizational genius of ancient Persia and the enduring power of a well-crafted military legend. The primary historical impact of the Immortals lies in their being one of the earliest known examples of a professional standing army unit, maintained at a consistent strength. Unlike citizen militias or temporary levies common in the ancient world, their continuous existence, rigorous training, and immediate replacement system created a formidable and reliable instrument of state power. This model of military organization foreshadowed later professional armies and elite guards throughout history, from the Roman Praetorian Guard to modern special forces. Their very name, whether a misinterpretation or not, has become synonymous with an unyielding, perpetual fighting force. Beyond military structure, the Immortals were powerful symbols of imperial might and divine appointment. Their prominence in royal reliefs, such as those at Persepolis and Susa, ensured their visual recognition as guardians of the great king and the Achaemenid order. These artistic representations, enduring for millennia, continue to shape our understanding and perception of ancient Persian power. Their legend has been amplified in modern interpretations, finding new life in literature, film, and video games, where they often appear as archetypal, almost fantastical warriors. While these popular depictions may stray from historical accuracy, they underscore the magnetic appeal of the immortal myth. This enduring cultural presence ensures that the story of these elite Persian warriors continues to captivate and educate, demonstrating the lasting power of a truly legendary military unit. Though the Achaemenid Empire itself eventually fell, conquered by Alexander the Great, the memory and mystique of its elite guard, the Immortals, continued to echo through history. These whispers through time ensure that their enduring spirit remains a powerful symbol of Persian military prowess and imperial grandeur. The name Immortals itself, perhaps a Greek misunderstanding of an old Persian term, nevertheless proved to be remarkably fitting. Though individual warriors died, the unit, in its organizational concept, lived on, perpetually renewed. This idea of an undying force resonated across centuries, inspiring later generations and influencing military thought. Even in the Sasanian Empire, 224–651 CE, which succeeded the Achaemenids after the Parthian interlude, there is evidence of military units bearing a striking resemblance to the Immortals known as the Savaran, suggesting a continuity of elite professional cavalry units protecting the monarch. This historical lineage demonstrates the profound impact and influence of the immortal model. Today, the Immortals stand as a testament to the sophistication and military might of ancient Persia. They represent an early example of a professional standing army with a distinct identity, rigorous training, and a clear purpose. Their story encourages us to look beyond simplistic narratives of ancient conflicts and appreciate the complex organizational and cultural factors that shaped these formidable forces. Through archaeological discoveries, scholarly research, and the interpretation of ancient texts, we are able to peel back the layers of legend and gain a deeper understanding of who these warriors truly were. The Immortals' contribution to military history and their enduring place in collective memory serve as a powerful reminder of ancient Persia's legacy, a legacy that continues to inspire and intrigue.